There is a quiet anguish that runs through the lives of the deeply intelligent, the highly aware, and the spiritually sensitive. It is not loud, not always visible to others, but it is persistent. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and pioneer of analytical psychology, gave this suffering a name: the burden of consciousness. To be intelligent, in Jung's sense, is not merely to possess a quick mind or high IQ. It is to have depth and awareness that penetrates the surface of things, an eye that sees symbolic meaning in what others dismiss as ordinary. It is to live with the veil between self and world pulled back. And once that veil is lifted, you do not return to ignorance. You see through masks, through systems, through illusions. And what you see can hurt, because this kind of seeing is not neutral. It is emotional, existential. It transforms even simple things into sites of contemplation. The smile that doesn't reach the eyes, the ritual that feels hollow, the social role that cages the spirit. The more you see, the more you feel, and often, the more you suffer. Jung called this inflation of consciousness. When awareness expands beyond the socially accepted boundaries, when perception outruns comfort, the result is not clarity, it's pain. Because in many ways, society is built upon shared illusions, that everything makes sense, that systems are just, that progress is linear. When intelligence pierces those illusions, it often leaves individuals stranded between what is and what could be, between the world we inhabit and the one we dream about. And this distance can feel unbearable. The intelligent mind becomes both a gift and a prison. On one hand, it grants the ability to understand complexity, to imagine new worlds, to connect ideas across vast symbolic landscapes. On the other, it makes it nearly impossible to live in shallow waters. It refuses to rest in simplicity. It aches for truth, for depth, for meaning. But in a world that rewards conformity, speed, and surface-level interaction, this inner life becomes a secret burden. People speak in cliches. Institutions operate in contradictions. Morality bends to convenience. And the intelligent individual sees it all clearly, painfully. This is why so many sensitive minds find themselves withdrawing. Not from people necessarily, but from the pretenses of social interaction. They feel the subtle emotional undercurrents in conversation. They recognize the hidden motivations behind polite smiles. They pick up on unspoken tensions, unacknowledged grief, and repressed anger. It becomes exhausting not because they are antisocial, but because they are too attuned. Jung observed that such people are often labeled as too much, too intense, too analytical, too emotional, too sensitive. But these labels are defensive reactions. They reveal a society that doesn't know how to hold the depth of consciousness. And so, from an early age, many gifted individuals learn to fragment themselves, showing only the parts that are acceptable, hiding the rest. This false self becomes a kind of armor. It protects, but it also isolates. And over time, it hardens into a persona that feels more like a mask than a home. Behind it, the true self becomes exiled, yearning to be seen but terrified of rejection. Jung called this the shadow, the parts of ourselves we disown, not because they are bad, but because they are unwelcome. For the intelligent, the shadow often includes their own emotional vulnerability. They become so skilled at thinking, analyzing, and explaining that they forget how to feel. Emotion is intellectualized. Pain is rationalized. Grief is spiritualized. And the heart, meanwhile, remains untouched. This creates a dangerous imbalance, what Jung warned about as the dominance of the ego over the unconscious. The ego wants control. It wants clarity, certainty, power. But the unconscious speaks a different language. It speaks through dreams, through symbols, through symptoms. When ignored, it fights back. Depression, anxiety, obsessive thoughts, psychosomatic illness, these are often signs that the unconscious is demanding to be heard. Jung saw this not as failure, but as invitation. An invitation to descend into the underworld of the psyche, to reclaim what was lost, to integrate what was rejected, to become whole. But integration is not a purely mental task. It is emotional. It is spiritual. It is messy. The path of individuation, the process of becoming your true self, is not a climb up a mountain. It is a descent into the depths, into the pain of childhood wounds, into the fears that shaped you, into the shadow you disowned to be loved. And for the gifted, this path can be even harder because their intelligence becomes a shield against vulnerability. They know how to explain their feelings without feeling them. They understand their trauma, but have never truly grieved it. And this, Jung would say, is where true transformation begins, when the mind surrenders its throne and listens to the heart, when control gives way to surrender, when perfectionism gives way to authenticity. But this transformation is not immediate. It often begins in crisis. The collapse of a career, the end of a relationship, a spiritual emergency, an illness. These breakdowns are not punishments, they are thresholds. They force us to let go of identities that no longer serve us. And in that letting go, we open to something deeper. Jung called this the death of the ego. And though it feels like annihilation, it is the precondition for rebirth. A rebirth into authenticity, into soul, into a life no longer dictated by the expectations of others, but guided by an inner compass. Yet this inner compass is not found through thinking alone. It is found through dreams, through art, through the body, through silence, through myth and symbol and ritual. Jung emphasized that we must re-engage the symbolic dimension of life because the soul does not speak in logic. It speaks in metaphor. And here lies one of Jung's most powerful insights, that intelligence is not enough. Knowledge alone cannot sustain a meaningful life. We must cultivate wisdom, the ability to live in relationship with the unknown, to hold paradox, to honor mystery. Wisdom is what tempers intelligence. It keeps the mind humble, open, and connected. It transforms the desire to control into the capacity to relate. And it is this capacity that the world needs most, not more cleverness, but more depth, more presence, more humanity. For the intelligent, this is the final challenge. Not to know more, but to be more. Not to explain life, but to participate in it. Not to transcend suffering, but to let suffering transform them. Because at the heart of Jung's vision is not despair, but hope. Hope that our pain has purpose, that our wounds can become our teachers, that our sensitivity is not a flaw, but a gateway, that our loneliness, our exile, our darkness, all of it can become the raw material for something sacred. Jung spoke of the archetype of the wounded healer, those who have faced their pain and come out the other side not unscathed, but transformed. These individuals carry medicine, not in spite of their wounds, but through them. They become guides, artists, poets, philosophers, not because they sought glory, but because they answered a deeper call. A call to meaning, a call to wholeness, a call to become fully, painfully, beautifully human. And so, if you feel everything too deeply, if you've been called too sensitive, too intense, too smart for your own good, if you've withdrawn from the world because it feels too shallow, too loud, too fast, you are not broken. You are awake. And that awakening, though painful, is not a curse. It is a calling, a sacred task to walk through the fire, to listen to your soul, to reclaim your shadow, to feel fully, and to live not as a perfect mind, but as a whole self. This is what Jung offered us. Not comfort, but truth. Not escape, but transformation. Not answers, but a path. A path that leads us back to ourselves and forward into a life rich with meaning, connection, and depth. It is not an easy path, but it is a worthy one. So if this message resonated with you, if you felt the ache of awareness, the loneliness of depth, or the quiet sorrow of seeing too much, know this: you are not alone. There is a hidden community of souls walking the same path: thinkers, dreamers, artists, seekers. Those who feel the weight of the world not because they are weak, but because they are awake. And though the journey may be solitary at times, it is never meaningless. Carl Jung believed that through the darkness, we find the light, not in spite of suffering, but because of it. Your pain is not an error in your design. It is the very thing that makes transformation possible. So don't rush to escape it. Don't numb it. Don't shrink to fit a world that doesn't yet understand you. Instead, walk boldly with it. Let it shape you. Let it deepen you. Let it make you wise. Because in the end, it's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming fully, fiercely, and unapologetically yourself. Thank you for watching. If this journey speaks to you, consider subscribing, sharing your thoughts in the comments, and helping us grow this space for deep minds and open hearts. Until next time, take care and keep walking the path toward wholeness.